my name is Solid Iskak. I'm a software engineer at Clickattack, and today I'd like to present on how to debug Vue.js applications, share my personal experience, and explain which tools I use. And today, we'll start by analyzing different console logging methods, then quickly look through Vue Devtools, and debugging Vue reactivity. After that, we'll discuss how to use breakpoints in the IDE. So in our case, it would be VS Code, and then the browser. And finally, we'll use Proxyman for network debugging. I'll try to provide simple examples in order not to overload you. So let's start. You probably know about console API that helps developers with logging messages, tracking variables, and other useful stuff. And there are a lot of types, but I recommend you to look all of them. And to save some time, I picked the most popular that I use. Okay, so let's jump in it. The first, you are probably using the most popular console.log. So it's widely known. You can additionally use placeholders to format your log messages and inject variable values to make them more readable and informative. You can inject strings, objects, integers, and the float numbers, and apply any CSS rules. So in this example, I inject my full name and age as this greeting message, so it helps you to provide additional information. You could also apply any CSS styles to your console messages using %C placeholder, so it helps messages to stand out visually and making it easier to spot key information during debugging. Yeah. Next one is console.group and the console.group_end. So they help to organize logs into expandable groups. This keeps your console clean and makes it much easier to navigate through logs. So in our case, we provide some user details with name and email. You can see that it's much more clean. Additionally, you can also have nested grouping. I personally use it when I have a recursive function and there's three structured data. And so in this example, we have a level 1. So it's a log message level 1, level 2, and the level 2 information. So you can see the three structured data. Next one is console.table. So it can display arrays, objects in a tabular format. It makes it easier to read and compare data, especially when dealing with a large data set. It would be kind of very useful. Okay, another useful console is console.assert. So it logs a message only if a specified condition is false. So in this example, we created an empty list and check whether the list contains any data. So in our case, it's a false. So therefore, our message would appear as an error. So this is very useful instead of manually creating an if statement or any ternary operator. Another one is the console.count and the console.countReset. They're very useful and they're pretty obvious, and they keep track of how many times a particular piece of code is executed and the incrementing counter each time it's called. I would say it's useful instead of creating account variables and manually incrementing it and resetting it, and the console.reset resets our counter for that. And the final console message, so in our presentation, is console.time and the console.timeEnd. They help to measure how long a function or code block takes to execute. You can use it as a benchmark performance and keep identify slow operations or maybe slow functions. You can log in the duration to the console. You can also measure how long set interval or set time to take a time. Yeah, so we observed a lot of console messages. So as a personal recommendation, you can just make it a snippet in your IDE to get an easy access. Okay, now let's dive into Vue debugging, and the most popular and probably the most well-known extension for Vue application is the Vue Devtools. And I'll provide just a general overview without any details because you've probably used a lot. And so it's browser extension that helps you with debugging and inspection of your application. And the key features are, the first one is the component inspection. It's probably the most useful, where you can examine reactive data, props, computer properties, watchers, and all other computer properties. Next one is state management debugging. You can observe your state management, so it's mostly used for Vuex, Pinia, and the time travel. Time travel helps you to inspect store, and you also can revert to the previous states. Next one is the event monitoring, and also it provides route inspection and the performance profiling. So performance profiling, in my opinion, is the best tool to identify slow components and optimize rendering performance. Vue tools also provide error tracking. Yeah, you can see the error immediately. Yeah, and the final one is the visual graphs. So they offer a visual map of your application as a structure as a network graph. So in my experience, one of the most challenging parts to debug is actually reactive data. And unfortunately, in Vue 3, we have two functions. The first is onRender tracked, and the next one is onRender triggered. They help us to debug easily. And the onRender tracked runs when your component reads reactive data during render, and the onRender triggered runs when reactive data changes and causes the component to re-render. So I provide a simple example. So we have a count ref with initial value 0 and the function increment that increases counted by 1. On the template, I provide count with a paragraph and the button increment. When we click increment, it calls function increment. And to our debuggers, onRender tracked, onRender triggered. So on initial value, onRender tracked will provide our tracking reactive data. So in our case, it would be count. And onRender triggered when our reactive data change. So in our case, it will be when we increment our count. Additionally, onRender tracked and the onRender triggered provides parameter, let's call just event, and the event consists of new value, old target, and all other debugging fields. Just a quick note that these component hooks only work in development mode, so they won't work in a production. Just a small note, you can also add a debugger statement that helps to pause execution when reactive dependence changed or when they are tracked, and when change triggered to re-render. So basically, it adds a breakpoint, and I'll explain what breakpoints later in the presentation. Just keep in mind that when you add debugger, so it stops at your code. Additionally, you can also add onTrack and onTrigger to computer properties, watchers, and they help to monitor reactive dependencies and what triggers them. You can additionally also add to the watch effect. That will be very useful. They also provide event parameter that helps to debug even further. So as I've said before, we'll discuss breakpoints. So we'll use breakpoints in our VS Code and in the Chrome browser. Basically, breakpoints are markers you set in your code to pause execution at a specific points. So it helps you to allow you to inspect variables and identify issues during runtime. You can see initial value and the value after the change. And in Google Chrome, you would see a container with a yellow container with the two icons. The first one is a resume script execution, and the next one, step over next function call. I will explain it later. Okay, let's debug it. So in this example, we have a simple component. I created just an app.vue component, and you can analyze it on the sources tab. So this component consists of state, which is a reactive. It has a user, which is empty object, and account with initial value 0. And then we have a fetch user asynchronous function, which makes an API request. And then we update our user with the response we got from dummy.json, and update our count as well. So in this example, I want to provide that we got initial value, we stop it, and then we can see that our data updated. We can set our breakpoints on the code with the blue markers on updating user and updating count. And after refreshing the page, it pauses on our first breakpoint, and then we can analyze our initial state on the right, you can see. And after next function call, we can see that our user updated, and in the next function call, we update count as well. Yep. So right now we set markers on our source tab by finding our component in Google Chrome. However, it's not very useful. We have to add source map in our Webpack or Vite in order to see our folder structure. And in some cases, you might have a deeply nested folder structure, and finding your component would be very challenging, and which is not efficient at all, right? And the most efficient way to add breakpoint is in your IDE. And I personally use the Visual Studio Code. We can set the same breakpoints in the same way, but the only difference would be with the red circle, not the blue. So we add the same breakpoints on the state user and the state count, and then click to our run it debug. We just run it, and then we have the same tools that we use in Google Chrome. So we can see our initial value for count and the user. We go to the next function call, we update our user, and after that we update our count as well. So basically in this approach, which it's much faster and more intuitive for debugging, and that would be more useful to it. So in my experience, most of the defects actually come from a communication with the backend. So, and it happens when we don't handle the right status or display data correctly. And for quality assurance for QA, it's still considered as a defect, or you can say bug. Therefore, we need to know how to debug the network. And in my opinion, there are 4 most popular network debugger applications. And the first one is the Proxyman, Charles Proxy, Fiddler, and the Meeting Proxy. And most of them share similar main features. But in my opinion, Proxyman is probably the most suited for front-end developers. I'll explain later why. Charles Proxy and Fiddler are mostly used for general debugging. And if I'm not mistaken, that QA mostly likes Fiddler everywhere. And Meeting is mostly for developers who are comfortable with CLI. Next, all of them have a mobile support and the GUI interfaces. But in terms of pricing, Meeting Proxy is free because it's open source. But Proxyman, Charles Proxy, and the Fiddler, they can cost. However, you can still can use them for free, but with limited resources and the features. Please see their website, and their price might be updated. So I personally use the Proxyman. It's a great tool, especially for Mac users, because it's a UI interface, and it's designed to intercept, inspect, and manipulate network traffic, especially for the debugging purposes. There are many features that Proxyman offers, but in my opinion, the key features are breakpoints, map local, map remote, scripting, and the GraphQL, and let's dive into each one of them. So in this simple component, we have a ref that will store our user information, and then we have a fetch user asynchronous function that makes a request to dummy.json with a provide username and a password, and then we store this data to our user. On the template, we have a button, fetch user, that makes a call to fetch user function. And if we have a user, we provide a user image, username, and the email. It's just a simple component. So basically, when we click to the fetch user button, we display our user data. On the network tab, you can see we made the request to the login API, and with associated payload, and I got a response. Okay. By the way, I use a dummy.json API placeholder. They provide just a simple method just for a fake API. Okay, now let's explore Proxyman. This is our main page. In order to make a request, just clean first. Then we need to make our request. Yeah. Then we can see that on the domain tab, we see all the domains that we right now using. So it also monitors desktop application as well. And let's pick our dummy.json and pin it so that it's stuck at the top. Additionally, it also displays as a tree structured data. Yeah, so we found our request, and on the left we see our request, and we made request with our body. On the right you can see response. We got a response body as well. Okay, so let's make examples that we made a typo on our password, and that we want to update it on the fly without changing in the code, right? So let's make a typo on the password and make a request so that it fails. So it's failed, and it provides invalid credential message, and we need to update our password on the fly. How can we do it? First, we can actually provide, we can add a breakpoint. So in this case, So we find our failed API, right? And then at the tool, we need to provide a breakpoint. You can provide any name. You can just also include subpaths of this URL. So in this example, just add the request. Okay, so now we need to make one more request. Also, so our breakpoint appeared, and also when we make a request, it pauses before it goes to the server. And in the dev tool, you can see on the network tab that the status is actually pending. So it waits until we execute it. So here on the breakpoint, we can change our password so that it would succeed. Let's execute it, save it, and see that the status is a 200. And even though we made we provided the wrong password, so it succeeded. Okay, now let's update our response. So how it works: when we make a request to the backend, they provide the response. We actually can modify it by changing response body, changing header, or we even can change status code. So first we need to add a breakpoint, response breakpoint, right? So in our example, we have a user data with the different fields, and let's update our image. So in this demo, I found a cute cat image. Yeah, who doesn't like a cat, right? And previously, do you remember that we added request breakpoints? We can actually just click a response breakpoint so that it pauses it. So yeah, so we got our first request breakpoint. We can change our password so that it will succeed. And then now we got our response breakpoints, and then we need to modify our body with our cute cat image. Yeah, we need just remove it, paste it, and execute. So we updated our response. As you can see that our avatar image is updated. Next, examine map local. Map local mocks a fake API with a local file without going to the server. First, you need to set the URL that you want to fake, provide any network action. You need to set status code, provide response headers, and a response body. For the same components that we used previously on the breakpoints, so instead of changing our response on the breakpoint every time, so let's provide a fake response. First, we need to find our API, and on the tools, provide map local. So you can provide any name, change URL if you want it, and change our body. We can change the username for this example, and change our avatar image with a cute cat image. So okay, save it, and yeah, we see that it's saved. We need to refresh it and see that the data is updated. Just a small reminder, when you add mock API to your request, please don't forget to clean it. So after you using it, you can actually just unselect the item on the table, or you can just delete it. Personally, I have a story that I once forgot to delete a mock API, and I aggressively argued with the backend developers, and that they provide the wrong data, but actually it was my fault. Please don't do it. Next, we have a map remote. So it helps to change the HTTP request location to another destination server. You can consider it as a redirection to another server. One of the use cases might be you can test against multiple API versions. So for example, V1, V2, or switching between different environments, for example, dev and production. So in Proxyman, we need to provide the rule that we're working currently, and then we need to provide the host that we're redirecting. And if you want to change the path, you can change it as well. For this demo, we're still using the same component. Like I said, that on your backend, you might have different versions. So for example, you're working version 1, and using map remote, you can actually redirect to version 2 without any code change. But for this example, let's imagine that we're currently working our dev environment, and we need to redirect to our production, which would be demo.json in this example. Just provide a silly domain, and then we can redirect our to demo.json. Yeah, so it will fail because this domain doesn't exist, right? And then we need to add map remote, click to add icon. You can provide any name you want, which is dev to production. As a rule, we need to provide our dev environment and the protocol with HTTPS and the host our production. Click save it. So we see that it succeeded. So even though we made a request to dev.com, so we got a result from a damage.json.url. Do you remember I said that Proxyman is the best tool for front-end developers? Just because it has a scripting feature, which actually runs entirely in JavaScript. So it allows you to manipulate requests and responses in a flexible way. Proxyman provides a general template, with the two functions on request and on response, which you can actually modify. You can change headers, query parameters, body, or even change the status code. On the right, you also have a console window for debugging purposes. For this scripting demo, let's still use the damage.json API, and then we need to add our scripting. When you add script, Proxyman provides the general template with the two functions on request and response. But first, we need to provide our name and the URL that we're currently working. We need to copy and paste it. And let's first test our console.log. And we can just remove console.log on request and add console.log on our response. Yeah, we can shrink our window, click to execute, fetch user, and see that on the log we have our response body. Now let's modify our response body, and we can provide actually a new body with a new object. Just example, let's imagine that we have we need to return just username with a new username, and provide an image with our cute cat. Click to save and refresh it, and we can see that our body returns the new objects with the image and the username. Finally, Proxyman supports GraphQL debugging. It allows you to modify queries and the mutations. You can actually test how application handles various GraphQL responses and ensure that it returns expected data. On the action, you need to provide select advanced and provide GraphQL query name. Yeah, that's actually it. We covered how I personally debug Vue.js applications. I've tried to provide simple examples, and hopefully they were useful. If you like it, please click on the like button, and if I missed something, please let me know in the comment below. Thank you very much. Bye bye.